Sorry, sir. This lounge isn't for drivers. A female voice, sharp as a paper blade, sliced through the deliberate silence of the charter waiting area. He paused not out of surprise, Ray, but because of how she said it in front of three people who entered after him and were invited in without a single question. Dark brown vest, cream white shirt, soft leather briefcase tucked under his elbow. No badge, no watch, too simple to scream wealth, too polished to command, but perhaps and too dark to be trusted as a guest. He had just stepped out of a dedicated Lexus SUV, the door not even fully closed, when the staff member positioned herself between him and the fingerprint scanner. "Excuse me, please wait outside. This area is for verified charter guests only." Her voice was clear, clipped, as if she'd used that line on many people, but not on someone in a vest like him. "I have a flight confirmation," he said. No elaboration, no explanation. "Show me the name on the manifest." He opened the briefcase, pulled out the confirmation paper. She glanced at the airline logo, then gave a tight-lipped smile. "Sir, this looks like a vendor form. Are you making a delivery?" That wasn't a question. It was an exclusion. He wasn't doubted. He was assumed to be an outsider. From inside, a security staff member started approaching. No urgency, no shouting. Just everything falling into the script of places that only accept familiar faces. A blonde woman walked past pulling a snakeskin suitcase. Not a single question asked. She smiled at the staff. The door opened. He stood there, with a vendor form in hand, and an apology that was never considered. "Please wait outside while I verify." Mullins tilted her head, speaking into her radio. "What's the name? I don't see anyone like that on the list." "If you were treated like a delivery person, at the place you paid for, would you speak up or let them realize their mistake? Have you ever been met with that suspicious stare? Leave a comment. I know that stare." But what Mullins didn't expect was, the man she was trying to dismiss, was he truly out of place, or was the entire room the one that didn't belong? Mullins pressed her earpiece closer, fingers tapping quickly on her handheld tablet. The screen cast a pale blue glow on her chin, as if a person's verification was now just moving pixels. "Last name again." "Davis. Langston Davis." She typed again, brow slightly furrowed, eyes fixed on the screen. "Nothing." He said nothing. The briefcase remained tucked under his left arm, right shoulder slightly tilted forward like the posture of someone waiting to be judged for the umpteenth time. No longer counting. Nothing under Davis, Langston. No initials. No variations. She looked up at him, for the first time, but her gaze wasn't quite hostile. Just lacking trust. "Are you sure you were invited to this flight?" That question wasn't for confirmation. It was like an invisible fence. Those who cross it are qualified. Those who stop remain outside forever. Two other staff members approached from the counter, one in a dark suit holding a clipboard, the other with a Bluetooth earpiece, whispering something to Mullins. "Check if he's a guest of L&V Capital," Mullins said into her radio. "They're flying today, right?" He still said nothing. No nori. No denial. On his briefcase was a faint laser-etched mark, a doubled square symbol, almost like the logo of a high-end charter company. But it was hard to see with the naked eye, and Mullins didn't notice. A security staff member approached, neither fast nor slow, hand resting lightly on the radio at his hip. "Excuse me, is everything okay?" "Just a verification issue," Mullins replied. But her voice was lower than before. And this time, she wasn't looking at the tablet, but at him. The man still stood there, calm in a way that felt unsettling. Someone without authority would usually fidget, but he didn't. "I'm not in a hurry," he said. His smile was thin, polite to the point of being almost empty. A smile without teeth. No mockery. But it sounded like the creak of a door to a room they didn't realize they'd locked by mistake. Who was this man who could stay so composed while facing the threat of being ejected from a place that seemed not meant for him? Before further verification came, the automatic door opened again. A white man, mid-30s, in a Ralph Lauren polo, pristine sneakers, walked in as if it were his living room. He didn't look at anyone, didn't stop, just tossed a slight nod toward Mullins, and that nod, as if it carried more weight than any email, boarding pass, or charter confirmation in the world. "Morning, Alex," Mullins smiled. Her tone shifted noticeably lighter, faster, almost fawning. "Mr. Green, lounge is open, Mr. Caden's already inside." He responded with a cool and continued inside without a single check. No one asked his name. No one checked Green in the system. No one waited for a 30-second verification. He watched, not with anger in his eyes, just taking note. "Do you know him?" Mullins asked, as if the conversation had switched channels. "No." "Oh, I thought you were with LMV. Could there be a mix-up?" She was looking for an out. A way to retreat while saving face, but not for him. For herself. Another staff member whispered something to Mullins again. "No name found." "I'm certain. Maybe he's listed under a company alias." She added, as a final attempt to find a reason without needing to apologize. "Or maybe," Davis said slowly, "I don't need to have a name." Mullins blinked. And in that moment, her gaze changed. No longer seeing him as a stranger, but as an enigma. And an enigma unsettles people more than a clear enemy. The door behind them opened again. The sound of high heels echoed from inside, and a shrill female voice rang out. "Did you see the bar here? They've got Krug chilled already." She laughed loudly, as if the man standing outside had never existed. How would they react? If they knew the man kept out, here was the one who paid for that entire Krug bar today. The sound of leather shoes stopped behind Mullins. A man in his 50s, white shirt with the charter company logo faintly embroidered on the left chest, stepped forward. His eyes scanned quickly, not angry, not invested. "Just wanting to wrap this up." "What's the issue?" "Passenger name not on the list." Mullins said, quick as a checklist report. "Checked all the airlines." "Yes." "Not in the internal system, linked app, or L&V Capital's list." The manager name tag reading R. Sutherland turned to Davis. "Sir, can you confirm who invited you to this flight?" "I wasn't invited," he replied calmly. Sutherland blinked. Mullins looked at him like she was waiting for the final excuse to push him out. Then, "I'm afraid we can't let you stay in this area." "Based on what?" "Based on airport security regulations. This is a private area for verified charter passengers only." He smiled faintly. "Security regulations don't usually judge by a glance." That sentence thickened the air for 3 seconds. Sutherland didn't respond. Didn't apologize. He adjusted his cuff, then looked at Mullins. "Escort him out politely, please." So the final word didn't come from the system, not from the rules, but from a command light as air, yet heavy as a deportation sentence. Mullins stepped forward, hands slightly raised as if to guide. "Sir, if you could please." "No need. Srihin." Davis spoke and stepped aside, not in the direction she pointed, but toward the glass wall overlooking the tarmac. He stood there, looking out, not angry, not retreating, just letting them see their own actions, reflected through the unedited glass. Another passenger whispered, "Is something going on? Why is he just standing there?" Probably someone who got lost. No one knew that they were the ones on the wrong path. He stood there, eyes fixed on the glass. Outside, the tarmac cracked dry under the morning sun, but reflected on the soundproof glass. Only the image of those fumbling to push a man out of the place he paid for remained. From the right, a soft click sounded. Someone had just turned on their phone camera. The shot aimed at Mullins and Davis. No words, just a light zoom, then a pause. When the camera started rolling, could the truth still be hidden? The phone stayed steady at a 45-degree angle. No flash, no movement, but clearly it was recording. Mullins noticed first. She froze for half a second. She didn't look at the camera, but her hand holding the tablet lowered instinctively. No one told her to fear a phone, but she knew every word from now on could become evidence. Davis didn't turn around. He stood as before, hands hanging by his sides, chin slightly tilted toward the glass. But his spine seemed straighter, as if he'd just been backed by something stronger than a plane ticket, the gaze of an onlooker. Sutherland stepped closer, voice lower than before. "Sir, this isn't necessary." "It's not me," Davis replied. "Someone thought it should be recorded." The person recording didn't speak. A woman wearing sunglasses, brown hair tied high, elegant posture, placed her phone on her handbag in front, not hiding, not flaunting. Just simply, I'm watching? I'm saving this. No one ordered her to do it. But the camera's presence shifted the air. Everything slowed down, as if every move had to be calculated, every word chosen carefully. The security officer stepped half a pace aside. No one told him, but he knew don't touch. Not now. Mullins swallowed. Sir, if there's any way you can just step out while we confirm. How many confirmations is this now? Davis asked, eyes still fixed on the glass. Mullins didn't answer. 1 second, then 2. And just as the air thickened to near freezing, the automatic door slid open. A pair of polished black shoes stepped in, pilot uniform, gold-trimmed charter logo on the left chest. The newcomer didn't look at anyone, didn't say a word, just walked straight toward the man kept outside for nearly 20 minutes. The pilot still hadn't spoken, but Davis turned not quickly, not urgently, as if he'd known this person would come. They locked eyes for 2 seconds. No one smiled. Just a slight nod. That nod pulled Davis away from the glass and pulled the audience to a moment he thought he'd never revisit in his mind. 4 years ago, Royal Union Hotel, Sapphire Lobby. Davis, still in a vest, still carrying a briefcase. But instead of standing before a lounge door, he stood at the check-in desk for a summit he funded. Name: Langston Davis. The red-haired girl at the desk flipped through the list. Flipped again, then stopped. I'm sorry, you're not on the speaker list. I'm not a speaker, he replied. I'm the one who funded the summit. She gave an awkward smile. Do you have a badge, Sir Menurino? No. I was told I'd be escorted directly inside. She turned to a colleague, whispered something. Then a man in a different vest approached half a head taller than Davis. Sir, this is a private event. If you're not on the list, I'm afraid we'll have to ask you to wait outside. Outside what? The building. They didn't ask him to leave the hall. They asked him to leave the very space he'd paid $3 million to create. The last thing he remembered before turning away was the future black Capitol logo hanging in the lobby, his name, without a face. Back to the present, Davis stood still, as before. But this time, it was the first time he moved in someone else's direction, not pushed. The person recording lowered their phone, not off, just a new angle. And Sutherland took a step back. Have you ever been excluded from the very space you created, and if so, did you return with such silence? Davis stood still. No words, no immediate turn. But the pilot, Captain Reese T. Carson, who'd flown hundreds of elite charters, suddenly slowed his steps. His eyes landed on the briefcase, not for the brand, but for a faint etched mark near the leather's edge. A doubled square symbol, nearly invisible unless caught in slanted light. Captain Carson tilted his head. His face didn't change, but his eyes did. It was no longer the look of someone picking up a passenger, but of someone realizing they stood before the man who chartered the entire plane today. Sutherland stepped forward, about to speak. Captain, I don't think he... Hold on, Carson said, voice soft. Not sharp, not loud, but enough to make both Mullins and the security officer catch their breath. Captain Carson took another step, looking straight at Davis. Sir, you flew with us before, didn't you, last year, Milan? The textile summit. Davis didn't nod, didn't deny. Just said, same crew this time. Captain Carson nodded. Same aircraft. Refueled. Crew briefed. He lowered his voice, almost a whisper. We're waiting for your signal to roll. A passenger nearby caught the last bit. Frowned to him. Amnonifatum. Tweaker's signal to roll. Mullins didn't understand. But she saw clearly Captain Carson was shifting his body language. His hands no longer held a commanding stance. They relaxed. Shoulders lower, the unconscious sign of someone awaiting instructions. The briefcase stayed still. But now, everyone watching from passengers to staff began noticing it. Or, one whispered, did he just say we're waiting on him? Another, Sur la Redouance, that can't be right. Is he flying the jet? Davis didn't respond. Sad. He turned. lightly, revealing one more small detail on the briefcase's edge, a flat metal tag with a QR code and three etched initials LDC INV. INV often short for investor. LDC, the name of the charter company operating the Gulfstream G650. If a single briefcase could make an entire team shift their demeanor, who do you think was holding it? The woman with sunglasses kept her camera on her handbag, but now leaned to say something to a nearby drink server. Within seconds, three people by the entrance seat started whispering. Is something happening? Not sure, but I think he threatened the staff. Huh, nah, who? That guy, the tall one, been standing there too long. Rumors spread like red wine on Silk Silent, but staining. An older woman with a pearl necklace clutched her handbag closer. A young man in a green blazer pulled out his phone, not to record, but to call. Sutherland stepped up, frowning. Who's recording in here? The woman with sunglasses stayed silent. She just turned the camera toward him. A simple scene, a stressed manager. A black man standing in the middle of the room, unidentified by anyone. And then, as if to pour fuel on the smoldering fire, a male passenger, gray hair, shirt unbuttoned at the top, stepped forward. His voice carried loud enough for half the room to hear. Excuse me, is he supposed to be here? He's making some of us uncomfortable. That word like a nail driven into the room's ceiling. My uncomfortable. Secho, a term that sounds gentle but always used to push someone out of the privileged comfort zone. Sir, please remain calm, Sutherland said to Davis the first time he used calm for someone who'd never lost it. Security is on the way. Captain Carson's eyes snapped to him. Security for what? Just a precaution. Some guests reported concerns. Another passenger chimed in. He's been standing here watching everyone. I saw him whispering to someone earlier. Davis didn't move, hands still at his sides. His eyes swept over each person, not like a challenger, but like he was counting every expression they revealed, thinking they weren't being watched. And then his gaze landed on the person recording. For the first time, she nodded lightly, very lightly, but enough to forge a silent bond between the observer and the judged. One wrong word could make the whole room think you're the problem. Security is on the way, Sutherland repeated, as if reassuring himself. Captain Carson looked at him, brows slightly raised not from worry, but surprise. But what made Carson speak wasn't Davis. It was the stupidity spreading in a room too luxurious to tolerate it. He stepped forward, eyes on Davis. Sir Langston, he said calm, clear the aircraft is fueled and pressurized. Whenever you're ready, we can begin boarding. For 2 seconds after that, no one in the lounge dared move. Dersurus, Wanderin, Nor Langston, Soner. A form of address no one uses casually with a stranger. A form of address not used for someone just asked to leave the priority area. Mullins froze. The tablet nearly slipped from her hand. Sutherland opened his mouth as if to correct, but no sound held enough weight. And the man who'd complained about feeling uncomfortable. He turned away, picking up his half-empty espresso now cold. A young woman in a black dress whispered to her friend, Wait, Sir Langston, like the Langston Davis from LMV. Her friend didn't answer before both their eyes turned to the briefcase where the etched logo now stood clearer than ever. Davis said nothing, just tilted his head slightly. Same pilot as Milan? Captain Carson nodded, a nod tinged with respect. Same captain, same crew, and same silence if you prefer it. Let's keep it silent, Davis replied. Not a threat, not sarcasm, just a quiet command from someone with authority who doesn't need to raise their voice. The camera kept rolling. But now, instead of focusing on Davis, it turned to the faces trying to hide their own discomfort. One timely address can silence every prejudice. But that silence didn't end as Davis chose. Not to board the plane just yet. Captain Carson straightened after the confirmation. Boarding is ready where, sir. Davis nodded slightly, his hand leaving the briefcase. But instead of moving, he looked to the side. Silent. Still, the entire room froze again. This time, not from fear, but from unease. A male passenger near the window whispered, What's he waiting for now? The woman with the pearl necklace gave a faint laugh. Drama. That's what these people do. Mullins glanced at Sutherland, seeking some cue, but he was now swallowing his own words. No one dared speak further, but the room's eyes shifted from fear to irritation. Davis remained still. His hand lightly turned the watch on his wrist, a watch with no face, just a simple metal band. No one knew if it measured time or patience. Captain Carson leaned in. "Would you like me to escort you personally?" Davis didn't answer immediately. He looked at Mullins not harshly, not coldly, just long enough to make her turn away. A lounge staff member whispered to a colleague, "Well, he's enjoying this," making everyone uncomfortable on purpose. It seemed everything had turned, but Davis's silence sparked a different fear. Perhaps the injustice wasn't in the actions, but in the feeling that they could no longer tip the scales as before. The woman with sunglasses kept recording. This time she zoomed in, not on Davis, but on the name tag Mullins. An unexpected frame made Mullins step back half a pace. Davis spoke, softly, without looking at anyone. "One person hasn't apologized yet. When someone doesn't demand power, but demands the right person acknowledge their mistake, who in that room do you think will speak first? Have you ever been silenced when you were right? Comment." They looked, but never saw me. "If you've been judged for your appearance." The stainless steel door at the lounge's end, meant only for crew and technicians, snapped open with a crisp click. No knock, no signal. But it opened as if recognizing someone without a code. A female co-pilot stepped out, posture straight, uniform pristine, hair tied neatly like a pre-programmed flight path. On her chest, "Sixi never won, sunken teeth." Delaney, co-pilot. She glanced at no one but Davis, giving a nod brief enough to avoid showiness, firm enough for the room to understand the invitation needed no words. Davis walked toward the door. Not fast, not rushed, but his shoes clicked evenly, steadily, loudly, as if each step was designed to cut through the stairs. A nearby staff member stepped back, instinctively clearing the way. A middle-aged woman gripped her handbag strap and whispering, "That door, it's not for regular passengers, is it?" The person beside her bit their lip, eyes locked on Davis's briefcase. "I think I've seen him somewhere. Magazine cover, Forbes or Times." Captain Carson followed behind, not to lead but to keep distance. In this industry, there's only one reason a pilot walks behind when the person ahead isn't a passenger, but the one they serve. No one spoke. Mullins still held her tablet, but her fingers no longer moved. The screen had gone dark, whether from low battery or because every access she thought she held was now meaningless. Davis paused at the threshold, not rushing in. He glanced back, not to challenge, but to offer a single chance for those who'd stopped him. A chance to realize not everyone who enters first is allowed to stay last. No one followed. Only eyes tracking him, and the still open door wide enough to make them wonder if this is how he leaves. Were they the ones in the wrong role from the start? And then he stepped through, needing no badge, no name, no escort, just his presence. Some people don't need a ticket because they bought the entire flight path. Next, the pilot reveals Davis chartered the entire flight for a fashion shareholder group, and the whole crew is waiting for him to take off. "Have you been excluded from a place you created? Comment, I built it. They locked me out." If you've been in Davis's position, Davis stood there, hands relaxed, eyes fixed on the glass. He hadn't turned away, but the air around him had shifted. The glances, the whispers quieter than the air conditioning, the averted eyes sharp enough to cut. And then the automatic door opened. A white man, mid-30s, in a light gray polo, chinos, pulling a Toomey suitcase, one earbud still in. He didn't look around, didn't need to stop. Just a slight nod to Mullins, and as if it were a code, she flashed a polite smile. "Welcome back. Mr. Green, Arenasham, Nalmatumain Bus. Mr. Caden's already inside. No checks, no questions, no boarding pass." Just a nod, and everything opened like it was programmed. Davis glanced for half a second. Not quite a reaction, more like a notation. The man disappeared behind the door. Mullins turned back to her tablet, scanning Davis's name again as if to show goodwill. Are you sure you're with L&V Capital? He didn't answer. I can try checking under a company alias if you want. The question sounded like a concession, but was really a way to shift blame to him. A drink server passing by leaned to Mullins, asking softly, "Still not verified." "No, the ma'am." Still no name. But he won't leave. Looks like a friend of someone famous. She didn't laugh. But the comment made Davis tilt his head, ever so slightly. A friend of someone famous needs a boarding pass. The one who paid for the plane usually doesn't. Mullins continued, not looking up. "Still want to wait." "I'm not in a hurry," Davis replied. The answer was like revenge, not with words, but by refusing to leave the place others had assigned him. And as he stepped back slightly, not to retreat, but to observe, Mullins instinctively stepped back too. Same door, same suit, but only one was trusted as a guest. The door closed behind Davis. No loud slam, no theatrical flair. But the lounge, lively just minutes ago, turned cold, like someone cranked the AC to 60 degrees. Captain Carson returned to the lounge. He said nothing more. Looked at no one. Just walked to the staff counter, signed a few lines on the crew checklist, then nodded a farewell. That calm, paired with how he'd called Davis Sir Langston, was like a giant mirror in the room, forcing everyone to reflect on their actions and stares. Mullins stood like a lamppost. Her tablet finally slipped into sleep mode. She'd never been forced to stay silent, but now, the air around her gripped her throat tight. Sutherland said nothing. His hands clasped, nails digging lightly into his fingertips. Someone who'd ordered escort him out couldn't easily step forward and apologize, not because he wasn't wrong, but because he was still justifying himself. "I just followed protocol." A young passenger bent down to grab their phone, opened the selfie camera, then quickly shut it as if they'd done something wrong. The woman with sunglasses had stopped recording when Davis stepped through the side door, but she hadn't left. Her hand stayed on her bag, camera still aimed at the staff. Someone wanted to speak, but no one knew how to start. No one yelled at Davis. No one touched him. But every prior act, the looks, the frowns, the deliberate delays, now stood as evidence. A passenger murmured, "He chartered the whole plane. What about the people sitting here?" Another replied, quieter, "They're all guests. Maybe the fashion shareholder group. We're just passing through the same room as the guy who paid for it all." No one apologized. No one bowed their head. But the silence was so heavy, they clutched champagne glasses to keep their hands from shaking. When everyone's wrong but no one speaks, does an apology still matter? If it comes after a string of deliberate silences. Davis made a move that left no one able to dodge responsibility any longer. A young staff member emerged from the crew area. He carried a sealed silver gray envelope and headed straight to the reception counter. On the front, a single handwritten line. "To A8 Mullins, lounge host, Le Fontaine Jet Center." Mullins stared at the envelope like an alien object. She hesitated, then took it with both hands. No fear in her eyes, just a question repeating to the point of suffocation. Why is he sending something back? Sutherland stepped closer. What's that?" Mullins opened it. Inside wasn't a complaint, nor a legal document, just a color A4 printout of Gulf Sky Private's homepage. Center of the page, a photo of Davis with the flight crew. Caption below, "Langston Davis, strategic partner and investor, Global Route Division." Beneath the printout was a small note. Neat handwriting, no flourish. "Next time, verify people, not just names." No threats. No demands for compensation. Just a single note light as a pat on the shoulder, but enough for everyone in the room to know they missed a chance to do right from the start. Mullins stood silent. Sutherland slowly sank into a nearby chair. A passenger bowed their head, opened their phone to the selfie camera from earlier, and deleted it. No one was yelled at. No one was called out publicly, but they were exposed in a way that made any apology now late. From the tarmac, the jet engines began to roar. The Gulfstream G650 taxied from its parking spot, preparing for takeoff. No one in the lounge knew exactly where it was going. Only one thing was certain: they weren't invited. Perhaps the scariest silence is when someone remains kind to you after you quietly cast them aside. The video of the incident began to spread, but the one who said nothing was the one worth hearing most. The next morning, a 40-second clip surfaced on a TikTok account with over 200,000 followers. Captioned, "They tried to escort him out until the pilot called him escort." No names tagged, no location specified. But those in the know recognized it instantly. Fontaine Jet Center's Lounge, Miami branch. 4 hours later, it hit 2 million views. 8 hours later, the charter company was tagged relentlessly on Twitter. By day's end, a civil rights lawyer reposted the video with a cold caption. "Sometimes you don't need to shout. Just be quiet enough for the world to hear who really has the right to walk through that door." The reaction wasn't a loud scandal, but it lingered like an open wound. Each time the clip resurfaced on someone's feed, Fontaine's reputation took another hit. Inside, Mullins still showed up for her morning shift, but no longer at the main desk. She was temporarily reassigned to customer data support, a soft term for unofficial suspension. No internal email went out to all branch staff. No public apology was posted. Just a brief line in the morning meeting. "From today, let the charter team directly verify renters, no assumptions from the list." Sutherland wasn't investigated yet. Technically, he hadn't touched anyone or said anything wrong. Just said too little. At the exact moment clarity was needed, a new lounge staff member asked quietly at noon, "That seat, why's no one sitting there?" The reply, "It's the seat of the guy they tried to kick out who deserved a red carpet. Left empty, so everyone remembers." No one from the lounge reached out to Davis. No one asked if he wanted to meet to clear things up. They thought he'd speak out, but he didn't. That silence made that seat even harder to fill. Sometimes an apology isn't what's needed, but someone brave enough to admit, "I was wrong from the first glance." Davis didn't sue, didn't go to the press, but sent a single document to the airline's board. A day after the viral video hit 3 million views, not a single post from Langston Davis appeared on social media. No articles quoted him. No tweets, no interviews. Just one action, a short email. No subject, no message, only an attachment. Recipients: Chairman of the Charter Company's Board, Audrey Fontaine Jet Center's PR Director, and 7 major shareholders of LMV Capital. The attachment was the original video, internal, from the lounge's ceiling surveillance camera. A cold angle, not as polished as TikTok, no captions or music. Just raw actions Davis questioned, held back, and called sir by the pilot before everything flipped. No one replied to the email that first day. But 3 days later, an emergency shareholder meeting was held in New York. The agenda didn't list discrimination case, just a softer line. Reevaluation of client access protocols in Tier 1 charter lounges. Davis was there, not in the guest seats, but among the strategic advisors with 2 legal representatives. He didn't speak, didn't need to. His choice not to pull funding, not to sue, not to make a scene forced those around the table to confront their personal accountability more deeply than any speech could have. A young shareholder whispered to a colleague, "If it were me, I'd have taken it all to the press." The reply, "That's why you're not in this room like he is." When the meeting ended, Davis left a green paper folder on the executive secretary's desk. On the cover, handwritten in pen, "What happened last week is your internal memo, not my public story." Then he walked out. No further signatures. No flowers accepted. Just a message clearer than any press release. "I don't need to win. I just need you not to repeat it." When one person's silence forces a system to adjust, that's no longer power, it's principle. Davis landed in New York. Those waiting didn't need to ask what happened. They knew he'd done what he always believed was right. The Gulfstream G650 touched down on Teterborough's auxiliary runway, the afternoon sun casting a warm metallic glow on the plane's body. Davis didn't look out the window. He just rested his hand on the briefcase where it all began. As the cabin door opened, New York's early summer air rushed in, the smell of jet fuel mixed with damp asphalt from the tarmac. 4 people waited at the gate. No security, no reception directors, just familiar faces. They didn't approach right away. They waited for him to step down first. Cassandra, a black designer who went bankrupt at 28, now a major shareholder in the investment fund. Davis co-founded, stepped forward first. No words, just took his hand and held it for exactly 2 seconds. Not tight. Not quick. Just long enough for him to know they knew. Without asking. Another, Kenji, a Japanese brand consultant, the quietest in the group, handed Davis a hot tea. Not coffee, not champagne. Tea, the kind Davis drank after long pitching sessions. Heard Miami had a hiccup. Davis gave a faint smile. Not the engines this time. People, a system overdue for maintenance. The group chuckled lightly. No one tried to lighten the mood with forced jokes. Cassandra looked straight at him, voice low but clear. You held your ground. Not for yourself, but for this whole table. Davis nodded. That's why I didn't speak up. And why they don't dare cut you from the shareholder list, Kenji added. No one asked, are you okay? Because they knew someone like Davis didn't need to be asked. Just needed to be stood beside. An SUV quietly rolled to the gate. The driver got out, opened the door. Davis didn't rush in. He turned to his 3 friends. They call us the Silent Empire. Maybe it's worth keeping quiet. Sometimes the mere presence of those who understand you is enough to make the world out there fall silent. Davis wasn't just respected. He was nominated to lead an internal aviation industry justice campaign. A week later, Davis's name appeared again, not in the news, not on TikTok, but in a 7-page internal memo from Gulf Sky Charter, marked confidential, sent to all strategic advisors, lounge managers, and operational partners nationwide. Title, Initiative Discretion and Dignity Phase, a Lounge Behavior Audit. Page 2 in bold. Proposal to appoint Langston Davis as honorary advisor for the implementation phase of bias detection training at charter guest reception points. No one objected. Not because everyone agreed, but because no one dared speak against someone who didn't need to raise their voice, yet made the industry adjust. In a small meeting among LMB capital investors, an older shareholder said, back then, he was excluded from his own company's event. Thought he'd roar after that. The person beside him smiled lightly. Roaring gets shares, but silence at the right time gets you a seat at the lawmaking table. When the internal memo circulated privately, some lounge managers read to the last page where a short quote from Davis stood, no slogans, no rallying cry. If the door opens, let it open for more than just yourself. That's the only access worth earning. No catchphrase, no hashtag, just a redefinition of what it means to be allowed through. In Miami, Mullins hadn't returned to her old post, but she sent a private email to HR not to save her job, but to ask if she could join the new training course Davis was leading. No one forced her. No one brought up the old clip. But everyone knew she was why that course existed. In New York, Davis sat with Cassandra at a small Soho cafe. No one recognized him, and he didn't need them to. Are you happy, she asked. No. Proud, sir, Pudin. Not that either. He sipped his tea. Just at peace. And peace is sometimes the rarest achievement. When someone chooses not to retaliate, but to become the reason a system must fix itself, is that the highest victory? Davis got in the car and left. No escort. But an eye watched from afar, and one final question lingered for all. The black SUV rolled slowly out of the Tribeca complex. No siren to clear the way. No guards running ahead. Just Davis in the back, head lightly against the window, eyes on the flickering streetlights like they were breathing. A young employee in a nearby building saw the car pass and instinctively turned away because that look felt familiar. Not the gaze of a celebrity, but the kind of look from someone who'd walked through a storm without leaving thunder behind. From the 3rd floor of a law office, Cassandra watched. No wave, no text, just silence the way they always understood each other. At the same time, at Fontaine Jet Lounge Miami, seat number 6 where Davis stood unverified for 20 minutes remained empty. Not because it was forbidden, not because anyone taped a name on it, but because everyone knew the feeling of sitting in a place they might not yet deserve. Davis's briefcase, the one with the faint charter logo, the one that made the crew realize who he was, now sat in a New York office cabinet, not displayed, not retold. Just resting as a reminder, don't judge someone by the silence they choose to keep. An anonymous email to Fontaine's internal training center had a subject line. I stood on the wrong side of the door once. Now I want to learn to open it for the right person. No one replied publicly. But Davis didn't need their thanks. He just needed them to remember next time, before asking for someone's boarding pass, to ask themselves, do I have the depth to see the person instead of the card? Have you ever been turned away from a door just because someone thought you didn't belong? If stories like this hit something in you, don't forget to subscribe to the Unveiled Wealth channel to catch these quiet but resounding journeys of justice, resolve, and truth that doesn't need to shout. Because sometimes what stops people isn't noise, but a presence that can't be ignored.